Town of Lunenburg in response to the coronavirus, currently following guidance from Lunenburg Board of Health, Mass Department of Public Health, and CDC regarding the virus. Steps communities can take to prevent the spread. All their town facilities are open during limited hours by appointment only. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. Also, in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. So, welcome everybody. Before we get started, is there any public comment from the committee? Seeing none and seeing no public, we'll jump right into the review of the FY22 to 26 capital plan request from the DPW department. We have our new DPW director with us tonight to give us his first capital planning presentation. So, Rob, do you have a presentation you want me to give you the host to be, or how do you just want to talk about what your requests are?
Yeah, why don't you let me talk a little bit, if that's okay?
Sure.
So in my dealings with getting this together, I think Heather passed along that one of the priorities, I guess, in this go around would be, at least as facilities are concerned, envelope type issues with buildings. And I know the town a couple of years ago had those Vertex reports done for the public facilities. So in going through those and going through the recommendations in those Vertex reports, whether it was the 0 to 1 year recommendations or the budget they had moving forward, years 1 through 4, I tried to pull from those, as well as some of the things that may have already been on the capital list, or things that have come up that since I've been here are now items. So that was, in my short time here, that was my focus on this, was the facilities and envelope type projects. I know from my standpoint in looking at it, made it not difficult, but what made it a little bit more interesting is the TC Pasio's potential project. That without that in play, I think things become a little bit easier in planning for the facilities. With it kind of there, knowing it could or could not happen, of course, in a number of years. I mean, if it's approved at town meeting coming up, you could be looking at 2 or 3 years, you might be moving into that building and moving, out of other buildings. So it would then shift priorities. So keeping that in mind, I try to look at the facilities, knowing we still have to protect the buildings we have, whether we're in them or not, but also knowing that if you do move out of a building, then it becomes critical to take care of it. They tend to deteriorate quickly once you're gone. So that was not my main objective, but that's kind of what I focused in on a little bit. So the spreadsheet you have from Heather, I did go through. I came up with what I thought were recommendations. Why do I have the wrong one in front of me? Oh, I think I stacked them. I'm sorry. So what I did, of course, I prioritized. A lot of the information was already in the list from either last year or previous years. If you like to, I can go through my list in order. I'm not quite sure how you've done it in the past, or what you really want to hear.
Yeah, since anyone who may be watching from the public doesn't necessarily have this spreadsheet to look at, do you mind just running through your priority list?
Sure. So under the facilities, there's a total of roughly 37 or 38 items. I'll start at the top. The first priority I've listed is for the public safety building is to replace the existing chiller. That's been on the list for in previous years to be fiscal year 25 or later. From my understanding, it's been been getting hobbled along over the last few years with the thought they could continue putting off replacement until post fiscal year 25. What I'm told now is we'll be lucky if we were to get through this summer, and likely not get through this summer with the chiller. The chiller is responsible for air conditioning. It provides AC in the building. So that's actually kind of turned into a high priority, and I've listed it as my #1 priority at $150,000. We didn't have a lot of time to get quotes on this particular item. The $150,000 I've listed is based on the existing manufacturer replacing that unit. So it's a Train unit. That number comes from Train. Kit Walker, my facilities superintendent, believes it could be done more cost effective with another manufacturer or through other vendors, not necessarily replacing it in kind, but with another unit from another manufacturer. So this is probably worst case. I would hope if this gets approved, we could get it for less and do it for less. But so that's kind of shifted up to the #1 spot. Moving on, #2, the Ritter ADA ramp construction. That's $127,500. Money for the design was approved for that at town meeting. I believe that was one of the deferred capital items. So that was approved. So we'll have a design for that. So I'm hoping to get the money for that to do that construction. #3 is public safety building. The police department's looking to build a records room up on the 2nd floor. I know that's been in there a number of years. That's a $175,000 project. Moving on to the next one, #4, public safety building. They're looking to replace the carpet. That's a $55,000 project. #5 is a new one. In my conversations with the Parks Commission, they are really looking to start working on a master plan for Marshall Park. So at the last minute, they asked me if I could get a line item in to get something going there. So what I've got at #5 is $50,000 for what I'm calling a master plan feasibility study. We'd be looking to talk to either consultants, get some survey work done. A number of things could be done with that. But that made it in there, and I pushed it up the list just because, hoping to get it done soon, or at least get working on it, and maybe in future years look for the capital money on actual improvements. So hoping to get the study moving anyway. #6 on my list is town hall repairs, and what I did, these are items from the Vertex report, items #2, 3, 5, and 6, which totaled up to just over $49,000. I forget exactly what those repairs are, but it's basement windows, some other basement work, some things like that, more envelope type things looking at the building that hadn't been addressed yet. #7 is the senior center is looking to paint the interior. That's a $15,500 project. #8 is more senior center work. That's carpet replacement. That's a $15,000 project. Stop me if I'm moving too quickly. I know I'm kind of blowing through these. There's a lot on this list, so I'm trying to economize my time. #9 is another senior center project. They need some parking lot work. That's a little bit bigger. That's $125,000. #10 is also senior center. This is roof repair work. This is $7,500. Actually, I'm a little, I'm sorry. This is interior to the senior center. This is roof repair to the framing. Apparently there's some issue that the Vertex report identified with a roof rafter. So more of a little bit of a liability issue. I don't believe it's a real hot item, but it's a small item I'd like to see it get done. That's $7,500. #11 relates to the Brooks House. This comes from the Vertex report, and it's basically foundation work. The Brooks House is an old stone foundation. So it's fixing the foundation and then also, I believe, replacing some columns in the basement. And that's $19,995. Again, not necessarily envelope work, but it's certainly structural to the building and, towards the longevity of the building. So I considered it more of an envelope item. Number 12 is the Ritter Building. It's Vertex report. Basically all the year 0 to 1 items that were identified in the Vertex report. There's a number of items in that list and it totals up to $150,915. Number 13 is also the Brooks House, and that is the Vertex year 0 to 1 items. It's again a number of items, and that was $92,000. If you go to the report, you can see what those are. Number 14 is back to the senior center, and these again are all Vertex items. Number 4 and number 7, and it's the to replace the addition roof. So the addition was built in 1998. So the rooftop, the lifespan is coming to its end. Coincidentally, there's another project with the roof going on right now to straighten out and repair some issues they have at the main entrance. That money's already been approved and the projects has just gotten started. They came across some unforeseen conditions with the construction of that roof. It was, I guess, a little unusual where the ice barrier system was adhered directly to the plywood underlayment, which is unusual. Normally, there's a felt paper below that, so that the adhesive is right onto the plywood. So they've had to shift gears on that. They're going to make it weatherproof, but there was a recommendation from the architect on that to move sooner rather than later. He did tell me, I asked if we should move it up to fiscal year 22. He didn't think it was necessarily that prudent to move it up. So I left it in at fiscal year 23. So prior to item 0 through 13 were all fiscal year 22 projects. So I'm on to fiscal year 23 now. So that would be my highest priority for 23 is getting that addition roof done. And actually coming down the line I suppose we could get it into this year, but I don't have really a good quote on it. I have $35,661 based on the Vertex report. That's likely going to go up. I'm assuming it's going to be closer to $60,000 or $70,000 because of the unforeseen conditions they've stumbled across with the work they're doing now. But I left it in at that number and just knowing I'm probably going to have to adjust that next year. Number 15 is for the public safety building. It's an assessment of the windows. That's a $10,000 project to take a look at those. Number 16 is TC Passios repairs, and it's the Vertex items year 0 to 1. That's a large ticket item. That's $786,000. I've put that in year 23 based on, again, the TCP project that's going to be going to town meeting. Obviously, if that's approved, these things would get pushed out because they'd get wrapped into that project. If for some reason that project doesn't move forward, these are all identified in the Vertex report as year 0 to 1, so they wanted them done immediately. So I gave it a lot of priority in fiscal year 23. Again, that's a kind of a fluid situation with the TCP project. At number 17, also, so I'm still in fiscal year 23, public safety building. The fire department would like to develop unused space in the second floor. That's a $110,000 project. I think I had 2 number 17. So the next one is at the old primary school. The Vertex report had identified hazardous materials abatement, which was a $309,000 project. I don't know this item. Essentially, I don't know what's going on. I don't know the uses that have been identified for the old primary building. I know I saw money in the capital plan to demolish the building. So I don't know priority wise how big of an issue it is, although if it's demolished, I would assume the hazardous materials still have to be abated. So probably still work that needs to be done. In fact, that's why I have it where it is. Number 19 is the Ritter repairs, Ritter building and its repairs to remove and replace old wood gutters and fascia around the building. Believe it or not, that building was built with kind of integral wood gutters, and they're starting to create a problem. So they've been identified to be removed and replaced. It's a little bit more work than just removing them because they're built into the fascia of the building. But that's a $25,000 project. And again, that's an envelope project for the Ritter building.
Just a note on that one, sure our APDC group will want to review what you have proposed for that.
Yeah, and that's likely going to have an architect take a look at it, or a designer, to come up with a way to rebuild the fascia, but then also again incorporate the architectural aspect into it.
Yeah.
The next item, number 20, is also the Ritter building. This comes from the Vertex reports, items numbers 6 through 12. It's a number of things. It's brickwork, it's painting. It's a lot of, it's all envelope projects. So I kind of grouped them all together. That's $86,252. Number 21, next on the list, is at Town Hall. And this is Vertex repairs for year 2. So this would be, I believe this is not envelope project. This would be mostly interior things. So I've pushed it out. Again, more of a fluid thing, depending on what happens with the TC Passios project. I would imagine most of the interior things that are more cosmetic, that are identified in the Vertex report, would either get put off or at least moved back until the use for the building is determined. Number 22 is Brooks House. Again, this is more interior things in the Vertex report. Again, would push those out a little bit, but I've identified them for fiscal year 23. But I actually, 5 through 12, that actually does include some envelope issues. The Brooks House has a lot of issues with the way it's been used over the years, and things added, and offices upstairs, and fire escapes, and railings on the roof. And so I think a lot of those things in the Vertex report are replacing those. So I think the use of that building is important to be identified before some of these repairs or improvements are made.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've mentioned every time that building comes up, because the Vertex report kind of tells you how to put it back exactly the way it is. It doesn't speak to what you need to do to it to make it be a different use, because right now it's not being used as anything.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously we can't invest money in a building to only then propose a different use that would change it anyway. So, and that's not where I've had difficulty, but that's in trying to prioritize these. I'm trying to stay away from a lot of those types of improvements on the buildings that could be impacted, the use impacted by the TC Passios building. All right, so that was the Brooks building. So those items totaled up from the Vertex report were almost $110,000, $109,907. Number 23, I have the old primary building. The Vertex report had recommended demolition, or had included an item for demolition. So I've got that in fiscal year 24. Again, depends on a proposed use, or if there is a proposed use, or whatever is decided for that building, the fate of that building. So now I'm mostly into fiscal year 24. Number 24, the senior center, looking to install a new generator. Was estimated at $75,000. Number 25, actually I have this a little prioritized. Funny, I have it for fiscal year 25, but library requires rooftop HVAC to be replaced. Replacement 2005 equipment. That was estimated at $142,000. I have that in fiscal year 25. I don't know why I prioritized it sooner than another fiscal year 24 project, but I did. The next on the list is TC Passios repairs from the Vertex report for year one. That's $1,516,000. Again, those are all those things for the interior to get it back to where its existing condition, replace existing condition with new. So I've moved it out to fiscal year 24, even though it's the Vertex year one. So that's a very large ticket item, and it's a lot of things listed in the report that make up the year one repairs or improvements. I'm into fiscal year 25 now. Item number 27 would be Brooks House, all the Vertex year one items. The next is Ritter repairs, item number 28. That was the Vertex year two improvements. That's a $60,000 item. Number 29, again, it's year one for the Vertex report for the Ritter building. I've just got them lumped into the same year. That's $12,000 list of items. Again, Ritter repairs for Vertex year four. I have item number 29, and that's $16,242. Item number 30, TC Passios is Vertex year two repairs. That's a large ticket item, that's $674,000. Then 31, 32, 33 are all fiscal year 26 projects out of Vertex, and they're years 3, 4, and 5 respectively. And those items total, well, year 3, number 31 is $410,000. Item number 32 for Vertex year 4 improvements is $163,000. Year 5, the Vertex year 5 improvements for TC Passios is my next priority item. Item number 33 is $171,000. Then I have one item that made it also onto the list kind of late. I didn't prioritize it with a number, but I have it listed at fiscal year 22, and that's at the North Cemetery. The Cemetery Commission is looking to provide ADA accessibility around the, I guess it's called the niche wall. It ties into, they have money to pave a parking lot at that same area. I think they tie in together. If you do ADA improvements, obviously you want your new paved parking lot to work with those improvements. So between engineering and construction, I've estimated $45,000 for that. That's why I put it in at fiscal year 22. I'm hoping to tie those two together since they now have the money to do some parking work there. Next item is basically post fiscal year 25. It's repaving the parking lot at Public Safety. I haven't included it for 26. And then again, same thing beyond 25 or 26. The library will need a boiler upgrade. I don't have even quotes on those, but they're on the horizon. So I have 33, 34 items that I prioritized through fiscal year 26, and that's everything I just went through for facilities.
Great. That's a good short summary of a lot of items.
It's a long list. I apologize for blowing through it so quickly. If I've referenced the Vertex report by year, you can easily, if you have the Vertex reports, you can get into those and find those. They did a nice breakdown of what those items are. They're just not listed here individually for the most part. Any questions, I guess?
I just have one on the just how you fill out our spreadsheets. One of the options is effect on revenue, and it's a yes or no. Is outside grant funding available? And you said yes for a couple of them. One of them, I guess the first one was the Ritter ADA ramp. So just with that, just for you being your first year doing it and everyone else on the board being their first year doing this, that category in the spreadsheet, it's given a lot of weight for the prioritization.
Okay.
So when we say yes for that one, we're hoping, or the intent of a yes is that there's some imminent funding that would definitely happen or would probably expire if we don't act on this immediately.
Okay.
Just, I don't know if there was any 80 grants that you're aware of that you're going to apply for or think you would get, but when we check yes, and that one, it wants to be like imminent grant funding that we don't want to miss out on.
Okay, all right, so duly noted.
Thanks.
And
Anybody else on the board have questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, Paula.
on the development of the unused space for the fire department, can you talk a little bit about what that unused space will be utilized for?
I don't have an answer for you. It was handed to me. I'm sure I could dig that up at some point and figure that out for you. It hasn't been described to me.
Okay, I'd like some more information on that, just because I'd like to know if there's an overcrowding issue that they're dealing with. Is it development of, the gym equipment up there? Is it for the Lions Club? What is it that we're developing for? The senior center, they have an existing generator?
Yeah, and this was in last year's capital plan, I believe. And I forget, I'd have to scroll back down to see what year. That was earmarked for fiscal year 24, at least in last year's capital plan. I don't know what the issue is with the existing generator, other than it's been slated to be replaced. I don't know if it's undersized. I can certainly get more info on that as well.
Yeah, I'd just like to understand, how often the generator is used, what's the year of the generator, what's the need driving it, and I'm new to the committee, so other committee members may have that information. I just, I'd like a little bit more information. Obviously, if the generator is being used on a regular basis and it needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced, but I'd like to understand the age of the existing and how much use it's received. And the ADA improvements at the cemetery, can you talk a little bit about what those are?
Yeah, so what at the cemetery, there's, I guess it's crematorium, and they hold services around it. Currently, there's no sidewalk. There's no good ADA accessibility to it for services. So they're looking to provide sidewalks that are accessible around it and to kind of the gathering area where the services are held. So essentially what happens now is the family, I guess they pull up on the street and they park along the road, and that's where they're trying to establish the ADA accessibility. At this past town meeting, money was approved to pave the parking area near that facility. When I went out there to look at it, I basically thought that it was a little premature to go ahead and pave when you haven't sorted out how you're going to establish the accessibility around the building you're paving to. So as with a little bit of emphasis on the priority, we needed someone to look at it, whether it's an architect or a civil engineer, to look at those grades and draw up a plan to, with grades to make it accessible, so that, they don't pave and then find out after the fact they paved too low, the grades don't work to make it accessible. So I'm basically trying to head off a problem before it happens. So that's why that's there. They've had this plan. I know Heather's applied for some grant money for it. We were hoping to have heard on that by now, but I don't believe she has. So we're hoping there's some grant money for it.
Okay, so just a follow-up question to that. Is the plan complete, or does the funding that you've include the design?
It's both.
It's
So
both.
okay. Yeah, the plan hasn't been done. So I've got money in there for some engineering and some construction.
Okay. And the air conditioner or chiller at the public safety building, What areas does it cool? Is it the entire building, or are there specific areas that it cools?
Yes, so what it does, the chiller feeds cold water to all the rooftop units and other units that provide to the entire building. So it's the critical component to cooling the entire building.
Okay, so when we look at that, the potential development of the unused space, is the new chiller that you have pricing on, will that cover the cooling in the unused space should we develop it? Or is that calculated in the number for the unused space? So I'm just wondering.
Very good question. I'm glad you asked. I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out.
Yeah, so I think if we are going to develop it, we certainly want to make sure that the unit is sized appropriately to cover that.
Absolutely. Great point.
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. All good questions. Anybody else before we move on to infrastructure? All right. So as we're going through this, you've categorized these into 3 different types of projects. One's buildings, infrastructure for roads, and vehicles will be the last.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So moving on to infrastructure. Right now, we're in the midst of design. I've identified 7 projects. We're in the midst of design for Flat Hill Culvert construction. So the fiscal year 22 estimate is based on actual construction estimate from our consultant. So that's why I've got that in there. That's $428,500. And I believe that it is mandated, and I believe there is grant funding available through the small bridge program. I know there was an email today. If it's not the small bridge program, there's a couple other grants that could be gone after for it, depending on timing. Number 2, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's the project we already started, right?
Yeah, it's in design right now. The survey work.
Was it $200,000, or what did we approve last time for that?
I don't recall, but it's probably up in that ballpark.
Okay, that was all just for the design, and this is the actual project.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, this would be for the actual construction.
Great, thanks.
Number 2 is the Page Street culvert. Since I've been here and talking to the guys on the crew, and even this, I've seen this one for myself. On Page Street, there's a brook that runs under the road right near Arbor Street. That culvert looks to be in bad shape. So I've got money in there for survey, design, and permitting, followed up by the following year, item number 3. So I've got for survey and design, I've got $20,000. For construction, I have $100,000 the following year in fiscal year 23. I don't have an estimate on that. That's based on conversation with a couple of site contractors who do that kind of work. With the time I had to get this together, I didn't have time for contractors to look at it or have an engineer work up a cost estimate. So those are numbers I would likely refine moving forward, but I needed to get them in here because this one does need attention. So number 4, in talking with Heather and getting this plan together, we wanted to start identifying culverts or other drainage infrastructure that would, potentially need work. So that's kind of where these are coming from. So item number 4 for fiscal year 23, Flat Hill Road drainage. This is actually the, we've had, I guess the town's had a long-standing issue on Flat Hill Road with one of the people who lives on Flat Hill with drainage coming down the road. Our engineer had done a conceptual design to alleviate this. That was just conceptual. So this $45,000 would be to actually design those improvements and put together the bid documents. So I did get an estimate from him for that service. That's $45,000. And then following up, item number 5, the next year for fiscal year 2024, that would actually be the construction. So They had already done a cost estimate for us for that when they did their conceptual design. That one, the property owners on Flat Hill Road, it's been an ongoing issue for 20 years. It's a big item for what's seemingly a small problem, but it's, the town, and Tom knows about this, the town's looking to try and figure this out. So I've at least got placeholders in the capital plan to do that work. Item number 6 is just another culvert under, crossing the road. This is on Northfield by what's called Kelly's Pond. So another survey design permitting for a culvert replacement. So I have that in fiscal year 24, followed up in fiscal year 25, item number 7, the actual construction for that Northfield Road culvert. So that's what I have now. I know moving forward in next year, I don't have anything for fiscal year 26 in this. I didn't have enough time really to identify as much as I wanted to. So I would expect moving forward, I'm going to fill this out, 26 and 27 the next time we look at this. But I wanted to get some things in there at least so we can start thinking about them. If we can do them, great. But I know, the first one, the Page Street one, I really, if I could move it up ahead of the Flat Hill one, I would, but I know we're looking for grants for Flat Hill, so we need to get that done since we're getting the design done. So those are those items, if there's questions.
Mr. Chair,
Yep, go ahead, Paula.
you had mentioned grant funding for the Flat Hill project. Can you talk a little bit about what you expect to receive if awarded and how it would offset that $428,000?
I see Heather's here. If Heather would like to talk to that a little bit.
Sure. And I can answer some previous questions that I heard posed by Paula, I think, and Damon about imminent grant funds for the ADA ramp at the Ritter. I wouldn't say that those were imminent. We have applied to the commission before for ADA, both project and construction programs, and have only received one out of multiple requests for different projects. So it's competitive. There's a limited pool of resources that they have funding that they award projects to. So I wouldn't say that's imminent. It's available to apply for, but for this project, the ADA ramp project, I would say it's probably slim to none that we would get an award. The unused space at on the fire side of the public safety building is currently being used for a fitness area, records storage, and the Lions Club food pantry. And those would be the same uses once it became a finished space as well. There's no insulation up there. It's just rough framing in that second floor space. The senior center that does not currently have a generator. And so this would be a new addition to the senior center. The end goal for that would be to make it a shelter for seniors. The other piece of that would be needed would be a walk-in shower that would need to be added in order to make it a shelter for that facility.
And is that, I didn't see that on the plan.
That is not on the plan.
Okay.
So we would have to get a cost estimate.
Okay, do you intend to add that for next year, or is that what year do you envision incorporating that?
We'd have to, so that was in year 2, right? Fiscal 23, that project?
The generator?
Yeah. Actually, it's further out, 24.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
for
Okay,
the
so
same
you'd
year.
envision.
So once we got a cost estimate, we'd see if we could, how expensive it was, if we could absorb it into the budget. If not, it would be a capital request.
Okay.
The Flat Hill Road,
Hold on, Heather, before we go on to that, the public safety building, the air conditioner / chiller. Do you know if the replacement of that is, if it's designed to incorporate that unused space? Because I'm assuming there'll need to be piping, there'll need to be an extension of the existing cooling system. And are those funds incorporated in the development number or in the chiller number?
That's a good question. I don't have that answer.
Okay, I think we definitely want to know that.
Yeah, this kind of was a new development recently about the chiller. That's an immediate need.
Okay, sorry.
Heather, real quick on that same subject. If the Lions Club moves out of that space, how much are they vacating of the overall space that's looking to be developed?
I would say, I mean, last time I was up there, I would estimate probably 1/3 of the space.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
One last question on that. The gym, is that used by both police and fire?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay.
And the Flat Hill Road. So right now there hasn't been an announcement about the small bridge program grant funds, but we're our architect engineer firm that's working on the design has been, keeping their eyes and ears out to see when that will be made, if at all. They're supposed to also get us some other grant programs that we could apply for that project as well.
Have you incorporated it? Is it eligible for the TIP or is it not? Because bridge projects don't need to be on federal funded roads. So have you talked with MRPC about including it under the bridge program for the TIP?
Nope, that's a great idea. Tom, who's our MRPC or MPPO rep?
Jim.
Jim, okay.
So typically bridge projects, it's a different pool of money than the TIP, but they go through the TIP process, and the TIP is actually opening now. And in the years that I served on the MPO, all bridge projects were funded. So I would definitely reach out to Brad Harris from MRPC and talk to him about getting it included on the TIP.
Okay. And I think Rob's going to be more active on that as well.
Yeah, that's a great funding source. We were able to do Chase Road and Summer Street through that program. And so I really strongly advocate that someone be very active in that process.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you for all the valuable information.
Yeah, thanks, Heather.
If you have no more questions, we'll move on to vehicles.
All right, so fiscal year 22, I've got 3 items. Number 1, 6-wheel dump, plow, and sander to replace a 2005 International. Again, this was carried over from last year. Apparently, the one it's replacing, my mechanic feels we'll be lucky if we get through the winter with it. That's why I've got it at number 1 to replace it. Number 2, this is a new item that I've gotten in based on my observations. It's a utility tractor with a rotary mower on a boom arm. Currently, we use basically our sidewalk tractor with a small flail mower to clear roadside brush and vegetation. In my eyes, it's severely undersized, and it's not the tractor it's attached to is really not geared towards that kind of work. It does a number on the equipment. You need something a little bit more substantial. So picture a John Deere tractor with a hydraulic arm off the back with a large mower on the end of it. The unit I'm looking at is capable of cutting down small saplings even 6-inch diameter. Not that we want to use it for that, but it's a much more substantial unit. It would just really, we get a lot more done in a lot less time. And I think it's an area that's not been ignored, but we can't get to everything that needs to be done. So this would help alleviate that. So I've got that at number 2. That's $165,000 all told for the tractor, the hydraulic arm, and the mower. Number 3, I've got a 3/4 ton pickup with a plow. Currently, quite honestly, it would be for me to drive. Jack had been driving an older pickup truck. It's pretty beat up. I took it home a few times and I thought I was going to get bumped right off the highway when I hit a couple of bumps. So we've actually been using it in the yard. We still use it. The guys are using it for around the yard or to run, off site with. What I'm currently driving is a 2018 Ford F-350 with a utility body on the back with, the cabinets and storage. It's really not suited for it. I have other plans for it. I'd like to use it for the mechanic as a mechanic truck. So that would free that up for him. Currently, he has to throw his tools into whatever truck is available. If a vehicle breaks down, I think I'd like to have a more solid solution for that. I think this would do that. So I've got that at number 3. Number 4, Jack had this in the plan prior. It's a 10-wheeler dump truck with a plow and sander body. It actually would replace a 1994 Mack, which is well beyond its lifespan. They're still using it. They just fix it when it needs to be fixed. But it would be nice to have something a little bit more dependable. So that's been in the plan for a long time. That's for fiscal year 23, and that's $250,000. Also for fiscal year 23, number 5, a new 1-ton dump with a plow. It would replace an older Ford dump F-350. That's at $58,833. Coincidentally, we had one approved for town meeting this year at that same amount. We ended up going with a Chevy unit, which was less money. So I think we could do a little bit better on that number when the time comes. Priority number 6 for fiscal year 24, another 6-wheel dump with a plow and sander body. That would replace the other 2005 International that we have in the fleet. The Internationals have, and even from my own experience in Gardner, where I came from, the Internationals typically provide nothing but problems. So I'd be looking to replace them with something else other than International, because the newer Internationals have even more problems. They're not real reliable. So that's fiscal year 24. Then also in fiscal year 24, I'd be looking to add a mini excavator to our fleet of vehicles. They're very handy. Currently, and this ties into a little bit more of what I would like to be doing as a department. We don't do enough in-house. I'd love for my crews in the summer to be able to replace drains and culverts more often than they do now. I think this would help facilitate that. They're maneuverable. They're easier to get onto a road shoulder, sometimes on a backhoe. So hopefully if we can fill the open positions we have here, I can use some of this machinery to get some more work done. That right now we put out to contractors. But that's fiscal year 24. It's something to think about.
Great, thanks. And yeah, just a note from my memory that 6-wheel dump that you have as the number 1 priority that's been kicking around on the list for a while now. It's been pushed off, and definitely time we actually purchase that one.
Yeah, I know my guys would be thrilled.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Not a question on the specific vehicles that are included in the plan, but I did have a question on the possibility of another vehicle. From a stormwater maintenance perspective and from a planning board perspective, a lot of the projects that are approved by the planning board require regular maintenance via a vacuum truck for stormwater drainage. And as roads are accepted by the community, oftentimes that maintenance becomes the responsibility of the town. And I'm wondering what equipment you have to perform that maintenance, or if additional equipment is needed, such as a vacuum truck.
In my experience, I would love a vacuum truck. The problem with vacuum trucks is, and I haven't priced one out in a year or two, but they're at least $500,000. I don't necessarily, I mean, I see the need for them, and I know, with the stormwater units, you have to use them on the proprietary units that get spec'd out and built these days. I've designed dozens of them myself. And that's always the issue is how do you clean them, because it requires a Vector truck. They do sell trailer mounted, or there are other options that we could look into. And I think with the number that we have to do as we're accepting more of them, there are certainly more economical options, because if you don't have a huge number of them to clean, you don't need the Vector truck. Although Vector trucks have other uses as well, for this, for the town sewer. But yeah, I mean, I would love something like that. We recently purchased a trailer mounted vacuum system for Gardner when I was still there. And I want to say it was under $150,000. So there are certainly other options.
So currently, to maintain these structures that are in existence, how is that done? Is it outsourced?
Yeah, it would have to be outsourced.
Okay, I would be curious to know, how many of these systems are being maintained. When we approve plans, it's with speaking from a planning board perspective, it's with an operation and maintenance manual that says you're going to do this, this, and this. And when the town accepts those roadways, that responsibility comes to the town. And I'm wondering, is that maintenance being performed? And if so, if it's being outsourced, what's that associated cost? Okay. Because while a Vector truck is expensive, depending on what our outsourcing costs are, it may make economic sense. So I'd like to understand the difference, especially if we could get away with something like a trailer Vector truck unit. Additionally, as mandates come from the state, stormwater maintenance is going to become a bigger and bigger priority. And I'd like to understand what we're paying for that, and what's the most economical way to move forward.
Okay. Yeah, I can certainly look up that information, see if they've been maintained. I know we met with our stormwater consultant just the other day, and he handed me a lot of information, and that might be in there, at least on the number of units. There was a little bit of discussion. I don't think we have a lot of them just yet, but I can certainly look into that and see if we get a decent count on them. And the ones that we do have, if they're getting cleaned, like they should.
Yeah, and I think it might make sense to also work with the land use director, because unfortunately, I think there's a disconnect there. I think projects are being approved and operation and maintenance is being assumed by the community, but you can't really assume it if you don't know about it.
Great, I'll talk to Adam.
Yeah, so.
And I love adding stuff that's not already on the list. Thank you.
All right, that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
Damon, quick question, if I may, to the town manager. I think she'd have the information. Rob is new enough so that he wouldn't be familiar with the question I'm going to ask. Heather, I think it was this past year or within the past two paving seasons that the entire paved area around the Ritter building, including the parking lot, was paved. That type of paving, is that part of the 2 paving management programs that we have, or was that paid out of facilities, or how was that covered? Because I'm wondering down the road with the areas that are on the plan for resurfacing, such as the public safety building, I think senior center parking lot. I know in years past, we did school parking lots with bond money, not capital money. So I'm just wondering, are we shifting parking lot repaving into capital now that we didn't before? Or I guess that's a long question to probably a simple answer.
So the Ritter parking lot, I believe, came out of the operating budget, the pavement management line. It wouldn't be eligible for Chapter 90. Parking. Those lots are, it's only for roads and roadsides. And so are you referring to the cemetery?
No, I'm familiar with the, why the cemetery is being done, and the funding is already there pretty much for that. What I'm thinking about are the projects that are in subsequent years down the road here in this plan for the public safety building, parking lot needing to be, I think that was in the list. Senior center, and was there a third, Rob, or were those the two major ones in the plan going forward in the next 5 years?
I believe those were the two major ones.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why we're tying up capital money for, general maintenance of a town facility.
I believe looking at these costs, it'd be driven by cost, because I know the Ritter parking lot didn't cost that much to pave, but if you look at the senior center lot, would be an entirely new area that would have to be the subgrade taken out and a base put in and a parking lot.
Okay, so that's construction of a new parking lot. I didn't catch the detail in it on the spreadsheet because I'm just looking at it on a laptop. Okay, that makes sense on that one. Public safety, though, is just a resurface of an existing area, I'm assuming.
Yes, and that's been on the plan for, let's see, what number was that? My print is so small I can't see. Since 2017. And it's replacement after fiscal 25. So that was,
again, I'm bringing these questions up only because we're starting the discussion about increasing the dollar threshold for capital projects. Probably won't finish the conversation in time for definitely not for 22, but hopefully for 23. And some of these projects are the target of that increase to get those rolled into the operating budget instead of capital, at least in my head. Engineering charges of, like $20,000 to, and then subsequent year, $100,000 for the actual project. Those $20,000 projects, unless they're lumped together, if we do go with 30,000 or 50,000, whatever that benchmark's going to be, there's going to have to be some other criteria that allows it to stay in the capital plan. Just a comment more than the question.
Anybody else have questions for Rob? No? All right. Well, thank you for great presentation and filling this all out for us. Do you have any of the answers to the questions that could ask, please just go through Heather or email them to us so we can consider them for our prioritization.
Sure.
All right. With that, we'll let you get on with your night, and we'll just close out our meeting with go from there.
Great. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, so action items for next meeting would be the prioritization. Heather, do you know we're working to your schedule with the budget? Do you think we should be meeting next week or next week's Christmas week? I don't know what everyone's availability is. When do we want to do the next meeting?
I was going to suggest maybe doing it a little different this year, as far as that the committee go through their prioritization without a targeted budget number in mind. Yep. We work towards that to what's available.
Sure.
So as far as your process of when you want to meet to discuss prioritization, I think in that respect, it won't matter.
Okay. How's everyone feel about, do we want to do next week? Do we put it up another week?
I would offer the 29th.
I'm
Instead
good
of
with the
next week.
29th.
I can do the 29th.
I can do the 29th. These are typically, well, will we go beyond 7?
No, we shouldn't, unless
Okay.
that's just some hot topic, but this putting it at the 2 weeks is helpful too, because I usually make a separate spreadsheet that puts all of the requests for this year on a sheet that you guys can go through and do your rankings on. So it's a little
That'd
easier
be
to
great.
comprehend than just staring at the Excel file. So I'll try to package that up for you and get it to you. If not this week, beginning of next week, so you have that to work on. You can fill that out on your own, and we can put our heads together when we have a meeting.
Nice fire, right on Christmas night. You just go over the spreadsheet. That's
Exactly.
Sounds
perfect
great.
Christmas.
I keep threatening to put out a drive-in theater screen so we can read the whole spreadsheet on one screen.
Yeah, it's nice to have all the information in one place, but it also makes it tough to narrow down to what you need to get narrowed down to.
I think having it in one place would be great. It would be very helpful.
Yes.
All right, so I'll say 5:15 on the 29th. Is that the plan?
Yes.
Sounds good to
Looks
me.
good for me.
Mr. Chair, I did have one thing I wanted to mention to the committee.
Yep.
The Open Space Committee at our last meeting in November, there was a property that came up for sale, and we were trying to work through a way on Flat Hill Road, and we were trying to work through some way to preserve the agricultural use of that property, and bringing in another financing option, and unfortunately weren't able to pull that off. But one of the comments that came up during that meeting from a resident and the committee talked about was the ability to take a proactive approach to this type of circumstance and the possibility of creating some sort of stabilization fund to protect property, and potentially utilize for acquisition. Obviously, if we were to adopt the Community Preservation Act, that those funds would be available. But since we haven't, just a thought that the Open Space Committee wanted to bring forward.
Okay. With that, is that one of the things that we're allowed to have a special purpose fund for, Heather?
I did some preliminary research, and there is under the law that allows towns to create stabilization funds, we cannot earmark funds that say for rollback taxes related to chapter land. But I have to look into it further.
But hold on,
Could we-
if it was a stabilization fund, if it was like any other stabilization fund, we'd still need town meeting, right?
Yes.
Yes, but the law designates what the uses can be for.
No, I understand that. So but I'm misunderstanding. Maybe I'm not understanding what Ms. Bertram is asking, what the Open Space Committee is asking for with the establishment of the stabilization fund. Because if we have to have town meeting, we can borrow money from town meeting, can borrow money too. So you don't necessarily have to have it, I guess. It's the nature of having a town meeting that makes the deadline tough with some of the chapter properties.
Right, and that's the problem. That's the and that's the question. Is there a way to set up, and maybe it's not a stabilization fund, maybe that's the wrong term, but is there a way to set up a fund that would allow us to act within the time frame allocated by state law to allow us to move forward with acquisition of a property? And I know it was brought up by Chris Menard, and I know he was going to mention it to the Finance Committee. And honestly, I don't know enough about how that would work. But something I wanted to bring up at the request of the committee.
I would imagine you'd have to set up some kind of non-stabilization account, but some kind of line item account, but then it depends on who has access, who has to authorize its use. I guess that would be an interesting idea to have set aside a kind of like a salary reserve fund, except for land acquisition fund somewhere. That would be tricky. Pretty interesting though.
Heather, do you think a revenue reserve fund is doable? If you identified, and I think I mentioned this the other night at that meeting, that if you identified a revenue source or a percentage of a revenue source like we do out of excise tax to be deposited into a revenue fund for the purchase of property or protection of property, however you need to word it, do you think that's doable?
Do you mean a revolving fund?
Is that what, it's a list of revenue funds that you've, that Karen provided to the Finance Committee? Were those all revolving funds, or there were other types of funds in there also that are considered revenue funds, aren't there?
Right, there's
Revenue accounts, I should say.
variety. There's some through grants, there's some by statutory, but I believe what you're referring to would be some type of revolving fund.
Okay,
And a
well,
revolving
that might
fund-
even work if it's set up properly, I would think.
Well, but that would require an income stream, and that's typically not from the tax base, right?
Well, why
It would
not?
have
A
to be
percentage
some-
of a revenue source, like we do from out of excise tax. If we can identify a revenue source that we can afford to take 3% or 5% of that annual revenue income and set it aside.
I
The
think
Preservation Act, I have a problem with, because money you set aside there, not all of that money would be available for land purchase. It'd only be a percentage of it.
Well, I think if we could do a revolving fund, that's great, but my understanding of revolving funds were that they were self-sustaining.
Not all of
Well,
it.
that's an enterprise fund.
Okay,
A
okay,
revolving fund allows us to pay for things that eventually we get the money back from. That's why they're revolving. I don't know
Right.
that this instance fits that description, but again, we should look into it, because I think having some kind of reserve account to shorten the time frame without the need to have a special town meeting for properties that come up out of chapter, I think is worth investigating at least. I agree.
Especially where you have North County land trusts that, you can take advantage of, but you got to have a certain amount of matching money available to make it happen.
exactly.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that'll be up to more of the Finance Committee and Heather than us as the capital planning, but it's good to keep a discussion open. So before we close the meeting, is there any other comments from the committee? Don't see any public joining us tonight.
As this is the last meeting, as we just decided before the holiday, I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, happy rest of Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, and happy holidays and all those festivities.
You too, Tom.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Same to everybody.
Same to everyone.
All right. With that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn at 6:24.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor in the order that I see you. Dave?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Paula?
aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
And I for myself. Thank you, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Aye.
Holidays.